Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, is with us every Thursday to offer her legal expertise by providing some general advice on the latest hot topics, of course having experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law. And she joins us now once again. Good morning, Despina.
Good morning, Brooke.
Alrighty, so last week we briefly spoke about the changes that will be made to New South Wales certificates of title for property. So since then, we've had amazing listeners call in and email in asking more. They want to know more information. So can you just give a little recap for anyone who's missed it? What are these certificates and what's about to change?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And of course, last week it was a bit of a rushed segment at the end, and it is coming up next Monday, these changes. So I did want to mention it, but it did occur to me afterwards, and I've had a lot of people call the office and email me about this particular change. So people obviously are listening out there, and I'm very happy that you are. But I thought that this morning we would spend a bit more time explaining these changes so people can truly understand at a practical level what it means for them. And when we go through these examples, it might mean that for some of you, it doesn't mean that you have to do anything. So I think that was the point from last week, that some people thought they had to do something, not necessarily. So let's go through these changes. So as of next Monday, the 11th of October, New South Wales will become a mandatory econveyancing state. So what that means for everybody in New South Wales is it means that paper title deeds will now be cancelled. It also means that paper dealings will not be accepted for lodgement anymore at the New South Wales Land Registry. So only electronic dealings will be accepted. So that's an important, significant change for New South Wales. Queensland's a little bit similar, but not entirely, because Queensland has actually had electronic title deeds for many, many years, but we're not a mandatory e-conveyancing state yet. And hopefully one day we will become like New South Wales, will become as of next Monday. But as a result of the changes where we have now title deeds being cancelled and only electronic dealings being accepted by Land Registry, what does that mean for landowners, and what does this look like? So I thought we'd run through some different scenarios, and I'm sure the listeners out there will be able to perhaps slot into one of these scenarios and then say, yes, well, that's me. Now I understand what I have to do, or don't have to do in some cases. So let's look at scenario one. So when you're paying off a mortgage, so when you get to that point in the future, it says after the 11th of October, you pay off your mortgage. What does that mean then with the changes? It means that you're not going to get a paper title deed anymore. So that's scenario number one. So you pay off your mortgage. In the past, you would have received your paper title deed back from the bank. So that's not going to happen anymore. Okay. What you will get is an information notice. An information notice will issue by Land Registry, which will confirm the dealings that have been registered and the date of registration.
And that's just by email?
I understand that it will be by email, yes, by electronic means. Scenario number two, you're a cash buyer, right? So when you buy that property in New South Wales and you're a cash buyer, you're not going to get a paper title deed. All right, so pretty simple, scenario number two. Next scenario, you've got land that's going to be subdivided. So land that you own and it becomes subdivided and new lots are created. You won't be getting paper certificates of title, right? So they won't be issued. Scenario number four, you own land at the moment. You've got no mortgage, right? So there's no mortgage. You own your land outright. What happens after the 11th and what do you need to do? The answer is absolutely nothing.
Yay!
Okay.
For everyone at home going, oh no, I've had my property for 60 years. Okay, so you do not have to do anything, but your certificate then that you currently have, that paper kind of deed, is that still valid? It's not valid, is it?
No, see, paper title deeds will no longer hold any validity after the 11th of October. So if you're a landowner now, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to do anything before or after the 11th of October. So you don't have to actually front up to Land Registry, for example, and hand in your paper title deed. You don't need to do that. And you might actually want to keep it as a memento and frame it.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, so that's what I've done with the old A3 paper title deeds in New South Wales. I've got them framed in my office because they're a massive, big
Oh,
size,
yep.
and you don't see them anymore. And it's a reminder of where we've come from. So I've actually framed them in my office. But perhaps people might like to do that
Yeah.
for the future. So another scenario, if you own land and there's no mortgage on the title, but for some reason, whatever that may be, you've asked someone else to hold your title deed for you for safekeeping. You know, maybe because it up until the 11th next Monday, it does hold value. It has been accepted as a security document.
Sure.
So maybe you didn't have a place to keep it at your home,
You're
and maybe you've
traveling
given it
or something.
exactly,
Yeah, got
and
you.
you've given it to someone else. So you should request it back from that person before the 11th, because even though after the 11th of October it won't hold any value or any security anymore for you, after the 11th there's a little quirky change in the law that you actually don't have a right to request it back from that person. Yeah, so if you say to that person after the 11th, oh, can I have my title deed back? They actually don't have to give it back to you, whereas before the 11th you do. And I know we're running out of time now, but if you know that person has it, you should just ask them to give it back to you before Monday.
Sure.
Right?
And would there
That's what I would do.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, memento as well. It's quite nice. But in that case, then, if someone did want to keep it, is there a reason for that, even though it's still kind of invalid?
No.
No.
I mean, they're not going to be able to do much, I suppose, between now and Monday. But of course, you'd have to query also why that person did hold it. It is a security document. So it's an unusual situation. You should always have held your own title deed unless you have a mortgage, and then the bank would have held it. But I would just ask for that back because it is your document after all. And you know, one of the other things, of course, if you don't have to do anything at all, and your solicitor that you've used in the past or other person asks you to hand over your certificate of title to them, you don't have to do that after the 11th. So that's another thing to note. So after the 11th, your certificate of title will not hold any value. If anybody asks for it, then you don't necessarily have to hand it over. So you have to think twice about that. And look, there's another scenario I mentioned last week, which is probably quite important, and that is the equitable mortgage situation. And we touched upon that at the end last week. And this is the scenario that's very, very critical for people to understand. So if you own your own property, but you have an equitable mortgage, meaning you might have entered into a loan agreement with someone because they lent you money, but for whatever reason, you both have agreed that you wouldn't register a mortgage on your title. Okay, so that person has lent you money. They've obviously taken, say, the title deed for security.
Yep.
But there's no mortgage on that property. So after Monday, that title deed that they've taken at the moment as security won't be valuable anymore.
Yes.
So that person that holds that as security, the lender, for example, this is going to be a fundamental change for them. So if that's the case, and listeners out there are in that situation where someone has lent money to somebody that owns property and they took that title deed for security, but they never registered a mortgage, and they never signed a loan agreement, for example, which is a document, a legal document that could be used later to evidence this loan. If they haven't done that and they actually hold the title deed thinking, I'm safe, I'll get my money back because I've got the title deed, come Monday, that's not going to be the case. So between now and Monday, they better rush off to the land registry and register a mortgage, perhaps, on the title.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's something that they need to look at and get advice on very quick.
Is that quite pricey, that process?
No, it doesn't have to be at all. Not at all. So it could easily be done. They just have to hurry along and get it done, and obviously use someone who can do it fairly quickly and understands and is experienced with that.
Yeah, fantastic. And is there a website people can find out any more information on this topic?
Yes, so if people want more information, they can go to www.nswlrs.com.au, or they can phone the registry on 028 776 3575.
Fantastic. That is Despina Priala from Priala Legal. And coming up next, Despina is going to help you find out what's wrong with a property before you even inspect it. We'll be discussing cause notices issued by council. Stay tuned. You're listening to Radio 97.